So hello and welcome to the 29th episode of the Spotlight Podcast, the unofficial podcast for Century 21 sales representatives in Canada, where we discuss the hot topics and important news in the real estate industry. So I'm your host, Linas Kilius, and with me as always is Eryn Richardson. Hey, Eryn.
Oh, Linus, how are you?
Well, pretty good. So
Good.
Eryn's a broker and general manager with Century 21 Heritage Group. Eryn has an extensive background in online marketing, technology, and customer service. I'm the head of business development at the real estate marketing company, Homeania. So if you're listening to this show, there's a good chance you're in the real estate industry. Being in this industry, it's very likely that you or one of your clients have at some point considered investing in real estate. If your client asks you whether or not it's a good idea to invest in real estate, what's your answer? Being in sales is probably yes, but it shouldn't be so simple. There's a spectrum of real estate investments, and some are better suited to your client than others. So on today's show, we're going to be talking about the best ways to tackle real estate investment advice for your clients, profiling your client to come up with the best advice that's tailored specifically to them. Before we get into that, Happy New Year, Eryn.
Happy New Year, Linus. How are you?
Oh, pretty good. How's this year been looking for you so far?
This year so far. Jeez, we're on the
fifth day.
So. Yeah, no, it was a good, relaxing holiday. I got to go to the Air Canada Centre, see the Canadians play.
Oh, cool.
And I guess the gold medal game's tonight, so that'll be interesting.
I'm pretty excited to watch that as well. So I'm going to be circling that on my calendar. Unfortunately, when this goes up, it'll probably be in the past. So hopefully we can say, Canada won the gold, but who knows? I guess we'll. But I think a lot of people are going to be watching that game tonight. That's for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so let's just jump right into it, shall we? So if a client approaches you about investing in real estate, Eryn, what do you do? Where do you start? Because that's a loaded question for sure.
Yeah. And you know what? It's so many people just try and quickly, think about the first thing that they can think of to make some money, for the client. You buy an income property or do this, do that. The best thing to do when anybody asks you a question like that, because it's really a loaded question, is to sit down and talk to them, find out some information about them. Basically, do a risk assessment. Find out where they are in their life, where their finances are at, what sort of risk they want to take when it comes to putting some money into an investment, whether to divide it up because they've got lots of money, or to make one big investment and put all their money in one thing. Or you've got to really start. You really got to ask them a lot of questions and figure out where they're at first.
Is this ever the case? I guess the thing is, you're a salesperson, right? You obviously want to try and make money for yourself, but keep your client's best interests in mind as well. Is there ever a case where you say, you know what, maybe real estate investment isn't the best way to go for you? I mean, that's probably the honest thing in some cases that, might be the realistic situation too.
Of course. I mean, you want to get good advice. Somebody who's going to use you for the rest of their life. You're their go-to for real estate in general. If it doesn't happen to be the right time, or real estate just doesn't happen to be the right investment for them, of course you're not going to give them that advice. But I, personally, being in the industry, I don't know anybody I couldn't make hopefully some good decisions for when it comes to purchasing real estate. It's a great opportunity for them to, if they haven't purchased real estate in the past for investment, which they probably have. They have their own house, that's an investment. But if they're going to put any of their money towards a different type of investment to diversify other than RSPs and mutual funds and all this sort of stuff, it's a great way to broaden your portfolio when it comes to investment.
So if you ever have a client that, say, is maybe a bit more hesitant about getting into real estate investment, and maybe they are the type of person that's more like, I want to invest in, more like traditional routes for investing. Like, what do you typically tell to those people? Because I mean, obviously we're in the real estate industry, we see real estate as a very solid investment, but maybe other people don't share those views, right? Like, how would you convince them that this is maybe a solid way to go?
Well, again, it goes down to that sit-down conversation with their portfolio and ask them the questions. What sort of investment, in terms of dollar figures, do you have to invest? What investments are you already in? Asking them questions like, okay, if you bought a property tomorrow and the market fell out, is that going to bother you? Is it going to bother you? You made an investment to buy purchase a property for $500,000, and the market goes down to $300,000 in the next 5 years, and you're renting that out to somebody? Is that going to bother you? And then we'll, and see how that question's answered. And if they understand the long-term goal maybe is a 20-year investment and it's going to go up eventually, then, you've got to be able to make sure that you tell them all the pitfalls of each type of investment you're going to suggest for them, explain the different types of investments, and make sure that you tailor their purchase to their needs.
I guess kind of what I was getting at is how would you convince someone that real estate investing is a good idea too, if
Right.
they do have that kind of maybe barrier to this as well, like,
Well, yeah, I mean, sorry, and I guess I didn't take it to the next level. So as soon as you have that information, you're able to then tailor your overcoming objection to, let's say, something that they may have an objection to it, or you may be able to really sell them on a specific type of investment, whether it be, let's say, a rental property for them, because their situation. I mean, to convince somebody to purchase a rental property that isn't ready to purchase a rental, or isn't in a position where they can do that, it's not going to be a hard sell. But if you can tailor them because of the information you've got from that conversation, it's an easy sell, right? You can easily sell somebody on something that they're going to make a conservative, a conservative investment with, let's say, lesser risk because of their portfolio, their situation, or just their stress levels, and but still make a great gain in the future. And you can show them some numbers and how to obtain that, right?
Yeah. So we've kind of skirted around it a bit, but why don't we talk about the specific kinds of investments
Sure.
that you traditionally would recommend to clients in different situations?
Yeah.
So do you want to maybe go over, like, there's the two main ones we talked about off camera. Do you want to maybe go over those and what
Sure.
kind of client would be ideal for those situations as well?
Yeah. So, I mean, typically, and I'm going to go typical. So, and then we can talk about a little bit more about different things that people obviously can invest in as well. But typically, when I sit down with somebody, they own their own home. They've got a few extra dollars in the bank. They know that they can put a 5% down payment, or up to 20. And I always suggest to do 20, so you save some money up front with CMHC and investment or that type of insurance. But what I do is I talk to them about income investments. Are you looking to get an income from this property, so that you have some more monthly income coming in? Are you looking to which would be a rental property? So we're going to talk about buying a property and renting it out and getting an income from it. We can also talk about whether or not there's a situation where they can buy a property and fix it up and flip it. There's a lot of those. People sit down and go, well, that's what I really want to get into. I want to get into fix up and flip. Well, do you know anything about construction? Well, no, I don't, but I can always hire somebody to do that. Or I saw this video on YouTube, and these people are going around and they're buying these properties. They have no idea what they're doing, but they hire somebody to do it. Okay, well, let's talk about that, because there's got to be enough. When you're doing a fix up and flip, you're going to go into costs associated with it. And if you're not doing it yourself, there's a higher cost. And, so you got to go through those sort of things. So you're talking about fix up and flip properties and making sure that's right for them, or rental properties, which can provide an income. And in other cases is just an equity or an increase in value, increase in equity, in terms of, purchasing, let's say, a condo property that rents out for $1,800 a month and it costs $400,000. You put 20% down, it just covers the cost of the condo. And maybe you're paying a little bit, maybe you're out of your pocket, you're paying $200 for condo fees or something like that. But in the end, the increase in value has made you the money over the 20 years. So there's that type. So those are the specific. I always find that it's either a fix up and flip person or an income property person that comes up in conversation when it comes to those sort of things. And
Okay, well, let's start with the fix and flip then.
Yeah.
So what kind of person is ideal for that situation? Because as you mentioned before, especially with all these love it and list it type shows and everything that have been cropping up over the past 5 or 10 years and such too, a lot of people will probably say, hey, that looks easy. I could probably do that. But I guess the reality is, like you said, not everyone is the handy person that can do a lot of this stuff themselves. Maybe they don't have the time. So maybe they think they can hire someone to do it. But that obviously, like you said, changes the cost analysis of the situation too. Also, a lot of it depends on in the market. I'm up in Kingston. I know my sister and brother-in-law were talking about doing this in Kingston, but the home values are so low, the amount you get out of renovation to the property value just isn't really worth it in smaller markets, right?
Yes.
So once they did the planning for it and like the cost benefit analysis, they realized, okay, that this just doesn't make sense. But in a market like Toronto or Vancouver, where home values are so much larger, doing this renovation and flipping can be a much more beneficial situation. So what do you look at, I guess, when you're trying to say, okay, maybe this is a good idea, renovating and flipping, or maybe it isn't for you? Like, where do you start with that?
Wow. Yeah. That whole segment of reno and flip, I could go into like a whole 2 hours on it, because really, I mean, I've dealt with clients that came to me, and I specifically have one that came to me and she said, I just spent, and she spent $5,000 to go to a seminar from somebody from the US that came up here to teach the whole system of how to do this, fix and flip. So, and they went into, they actually took the group. This is a $5,000 seminar. They took the group as one of the day trips to Home Depot to show them all the different materials they would need and all the different prices of things that they're going to need to spend money on and stuff like this. It was incredible. So, and in the end, I said, listen, cut your losses, because one, you don't have any knowledge at all about fixing up a property. So you're going to be using contractors. And I said, second of all, I looked into the whole thing is they're going to loan her the money in order to purchase the property, do the flip. And if it doesn't sell I think it was within 30 days, the interest rate of 6% they loaned on goes to like 30%. It was a big time shyster type deal here. So I got her out of that and I got her into an income property where she was more comfortable. So yeah, renos are not necessarily for everybody, but I got to tell you, in the last 2 years, it's been lucrative for certain people because of the increase in value. I mean, going up 30% last year alone, you didn't even have to reno the property. You could have just gone in there and done a paint job and made 30% on your or a lot more than 30% on your investment, 30% on the house value, and your investment's only 10% down or whatever you put down on the property. So it was quite a good market to do that. So, but there is risk involved, and you have to make sure that they understand that, market could fall out tomorrow too.
Yeah, it does seem like it's that high risk, potentially high reward situation. But yeah, like you said, I guess you have to make sure you've got the expertise for it. But if you get the right property, and I guess that's part of it too, is getting the right property for the right price. Like you said, a fresh coat of paint can do it. Like I know I've seen many statistics about the best place to invest in renovating is just like you said, a fresh coat of paint gives you like the best return for your dollar and such too. And maybe it's just a matter of staging it and painting it and making it look nice and flipping it that way. But yeah, so is this strictly, should this be for people who are maybe handier or have some construction experience too, or like does it make sense in a lot of cases to pay someone to do the renovations for you? And still, like, is that a viable way of going about this renovating and flipping as well?
Hey, if the market was like it was in the last 2 years, absolutely, you could pay somebody. It wouldn't be a problem. You could, in certain markets, certain areas, location. So I always tell people, listen, buy a house, and at the price, make sure you're in a location that dictates a high ceiling of eventually your return when you sell the property. But yeah, I mean, obviously, I would say in the past 8 years, let's say the 8 years that I was in real estate prior to this 2 years of craziness, typically if you're doing your own renos, it would make sense. But if you weren't and you're paying for somebody and you want to make a flip 6 months later, it really was tough to make any major profit on it unless you did it really effectively. So you've got to be careful with it. And, people usually in the first two, figure out the things that make a big difference. Some people really want to put the quality in it. And I'm like, you know what? An IKEA kitchen would be better, 10,000 instead of 50,000. Save yourself the 40 and put it in your pocket, because the person purchasing that house won't know the difference. So, little things like that make a big difference.
Yeah, and I guess that's it. You also have to have not just the idea of what you want to get out of it, but just a little bit more real estate acumen too, to know where to spend the dollars as well. I guess could potentially make the difference between making a lot of money or maybe even losing money on a renovation and flip as well. So, Okay, well, let's talk about I guess I want to say safer route, but maybe the lower risk route, the income property then.
Yes.
So if renovation and flipping isn't for you, which seems like it's a little bit harder to potentially get into that, income properties seem, at least to me, to be an easier route. But obviously, it's more of a long term. You get the income coming in, you're paying down a mortgage. You're also potentially getting the increase in value on the home, especially if you're looking at like a long term investment here. So is income property generally the advice that you give people? And I mean, I guess that's kind of a loaded question too, because there's a spectrum of income properties too. It's not just like, it is or it isn't. There's different demographics, different areas, different locations you can look at and everything too. So
Yes.
when we're getting to the income property question, where do we start there?
Take your top four. I guess I would narrow it down to about top four different ways that you can direct them in income properties. You take my brother-in-law who just purchased a property up in Collingwood that's going to be built in 2 years. He's going to rent that out to retirees up in Collingwood. It's a condo, right? So I think it's $300,000 condo up in Collingwood. He's going to rent out eventually. So there was a good opportunity there. Let's say student rentals in Barrie, that's an area that is north of me that has a college in it. So everybody knows their own area. So everybody knows demographically or as well, geographically where there is good pockets of good investments. So you get to sort of tailor your 4 top investments in your areas for return and show them the risk associated with all 4, as well as your the money out and the potential return. So you got to almost provide a report for them of the different types of income properties. The wealthy barber would say in his book that you buy one a year for 10 years. And there's a lot of different tricks and stuff like that with it, but you're buying condos in the same building, so it's easy to manage. There's less risk. Less overhead in terms of maintaining, all in the same building. The condo corporation, you trust it. You're putting, let's say, somebody in there. It's a typically an elderly building for retirees and the elderly. So they're going to just turn over every 5 years. So you're not having to do leases every year, that sort of thing. So there's those type of incomes, but every area has it. We have an area in town that's rent top and bottom. $2,500 a month is what you're going to get in income. That costs you $400,000. You'll put your 20% down to save fees, and you'll make an income off of that. But it is typically lower income. You're going to be dealing a little more with the headaches in terms of social issues and domestics and stuff like that could happen within that, or even lower income, meaning you're getting your check from the government. So what I would suggest is you look at your area, break it into 4 options for somebody and say, here's my top 4. I think you would fit nicely in this one, and give some advice on why that's the case. And if you do your homework and you provide a report for somebody like that it's an easy sell, because they're like, wow, you really know, first of all, your stuff. We have trust in that. And, we're going to go into this open eyes, right?
Yeah, oh, for sure. So what are the potential pitfalls here? Obviously, there's things like you could have a vacant property for an extended period of time. That would be an issue. Maybe bad tenants and such. Like what would maybe detract someone from going this income property route? I guess also the time sink too, that it could potentially be if you're managing a property yourself, especially if it's more short-term rentals that are getting through it, right? If you're having to renew leases every year, like you said, if you're in a student area, you might be doing, if you've got a student house, it might be like 6-7 individual leases you're dealing with on a regular basis too. Maybe you're dealing with like I said, bad tenants, damage to the property, maintenance, that kind of thing.
When I first got into real estate, I bought an income property that was 6 rental units within a house, and it was for university or college. And over the 5 years, I was also getting into the real estate industry, so I was selling houses. And I was consistently dealing with issues, having to go up to the property and deal with whether it be not payment or somebody put a hole in a wall, or somebody's complaining, somebody complains to the town, all these sort of issues. Not to mention, I made the mistake in having a pool in that property for students that go to college. So there was some insurance risk that I didn't calculate. So I'm more educated now, and I never would have put myself in that position had I had done a risk assessment from the beginning. So some of the pitfalls, obviously, rental rates. Rental rates are fairly consistent in our area, but I would say vacancy, headaches of dealing with issues, some landlord-tenant stuff you're going to need to sharpen up on and learn the landlord-tenant laws to make sure you're doing things professionally and properly. There's a bit of and I, in the end, sold it after 5 years. And the reason why I sold it is because the time money scenario where I only had one rental property didn't make any sense for me to spend any more time on this. When I was selling properties, making more money selling, the time I spent selling properties. So that didn't make any sense. So we sold it. But if I would still obviously get back into the rental market, because I still think it's a great market. It's just, I wouldn't buy maybe one of those for what I do for a living.
Yeah. And that being said, I live in Kingston, which is near Queen's University, and I've got a friend who, coming out of school, that's what they've been doing now. It's their career is managing several rental properties for students, and they swear by it too. Because at the time the property values were low. They have pretty much 100% tenancy rate too. And the nice thing about this is that you don't really have. Well, maybe you'll have problem clients or problem tenants, but they're going to be out in a year or two, right? Like none of these people are going to be stuck with you for a very, very long time. So I guess there are advantages to this too.
There is.
So it, like you said, it depends on your situation and everything as well.
And I think the fact that they have more than one and that's their source of business, and that is a business for them, that's different. My focus can't be on that if I'm selling houses to other people. And it was a pain in the butt, but for some people it's the right solution.
And that's where we just get into the whole profiling bit too. Is what whoever you're talking to, what their long-term plan is. Is it just one property? Is it many? What are they looking to do with it and everything too?
That's right.
Yeah, so you talk about doing your own area. We had Kevin Stanley on the show several months back, and one thing that he suggested was not necessarily purchasing property in your area for income property rental purposes, but potentially looking in other areas across Canada even. I think he specifically mentioned some place that he was investing in New Brunswick, and I think he's from out west. So this is very far away from where he's locally based, but he identified the area saying, okay, it's got very low property values, very high rental rates, very high tenancy rates. So the business there made sense. Obviously, there's the downside of not being able to visit the property on a regular basis. But is this a situation that you might recommend to people too, depending on what their situation is? Obviously, the absentee landlording is a bit of a difficult situation, but maybe you can comment on that.
Sure. No, it's absolutely, and I'm considering it myself in one area actually out near Woodstock, and in Ontario. Their property values, and now I haven't checked it in the last year, but their property values were relatively low for what you can get. And the reason why I was considering that was because I was networking amongst other real estate agents, and there was a Century 21 office out that way, and he told me all about it. He says that a good portion of my business is looking after my clients purchasing these properties, that I have somebody actually not only put somebody in the property, they maintain the property. When anything goes wrong, they look after it for like 10%, something like that. So, and I think 10% of your, let's say, monthly rental will go to the maintenance company to look after everything. I basically can buy a house, have it maintained, managed, and everything for me, and never have to actually even go see the house. Like, I mean, it's amazing. I think he was talking figures around $250,000 for a house, and the rental rates around $18,000 to $2,000 a month. And that's a great investment. So he was saying he did it for a lot of clients. So I almost just wanted to hand over my credit card and say, hey, go buy me a house out there and let's just do it for me. But you want to do your research. So, but no, that's definitely an option. Absolutely.
You must have a really nice credit card limit if you can buy a house on a credit card.
I wasn't going to hand him my bank account.
But property management. I guess that's the way to go as well, especially if you identify a location that this makes sense. Because I know you're in the Toronto area, the housing prices are very high. It's maybe very cost prohibitive to get into the investment property market in the Toronto area. So maybe this is a case where hey, I don't have enough money to put down a down payment on a house in my area. Maybe I can look in other areas and go about that route. And it sounds like like this agent that you're talking about from Woodstock has a pretty good system in place. I imagine others do as well too. So maybe that's something that you could connect with another agent, I guess, from a different area through whatever means. Is this a good way to go? I guess networking and finding this agent in the first place was a great find for you.
Yeah, you don't want to call an agent and say, well, what do you have in your area? Tell me what the systems are like up there. They'll make something up, like something like they'll just say, I'll get you a system, no problem. Buy this house, do this, and that's fine. He just told me about it, and he says I've been doing it. So, I mean, to have somebody have a past track record and history of doing it for other clients gave me confidence in knowing that this is what they do in that area. I just don't want somebody to go and buy me a house and rent it for me. I want a system. I want something that's proven, and that I can set it and forget it, right?
Mm-hmm. So I guess it's another question too. Like, what if you don't have potentially enough capital to put the down payment on a house, but you do want to get into real estate investment? Do you have any options there?
Oof. So no down payment?
Well, maybe not. Maybe you don't have like $50,000 to $100,000 to put down towards down payment, but maybe you've got $10,000 to $20,000 that you want to invest in real estate. Is there anything you could do with that route, or what would you tell a client like that? Is real estate just not maybe the best route for them? I'm just trying to think about the barriers.
Yeah, I mean, it may be a difference of if you're under 50,000 in Toronto, good luck. Yeah. But you might point them towards Woodstock. You might point them towards Barrie. You might point different areas that of that where the values are lower. You can also point them towards a very good mortgage broker. Somebody who really can pull some strings with getting you a decent mortgage at a decent price. Remember, borrowing money has never been cheaper. So if somebody can still loan you money at 5% or 6% with no money down or something, or 5% down or even less, or you're in a situation where you're self-employed and you need to pay a higher rate, it's not the end of the world. It's only for 3 years, 5 years, whatever you sign for. And at the end, you can roll that into a cheaper mortgage rate down in the future. You just have to do a cost analysis to see whether or not, having somebody pay down your mortgage is better than paying 6% interest. And if it is, then it makes sense. So that might be an option too. There's lots of lending institutions and private lenders and stuff that will lend money based on low money down. I don't know about no money down. A lot of them, difficult, but low money down might be the answer. Used to be, when I got into the industry 10 years ago, for 11, 12 years ago, whatever it was, you could borrow with nothing down, 40-year AM. It was incredible, but it's not like that anymore.
What about like over leveraging too? Is that something you be concerned about? Obviously, your clients might maybe get all like golden eyed about this, that think it's the best thing in the world. They want to leverage everything they've got towards real estate investment. Like, do you ever have to pump the brakes on prospective clients too, saying like maybe you should start slow?
Well, yeah, and you have to look at the portfolio and see whether or not they're over leveraging themselves in one area. So the whole idea of having a portfolio is that you have different investments in different areas, and you don't want to over leverage in just one area. So you do want to make sure that if the stock market goes down, don't worry, I've got real estate investments that are going through the roof. Or if the real estate market goes down, don't worry, I've got mutual funds, or I've bought lots of gold, gold bars. They're sitting in my bank. Or sitting in a vault somewhere or something. I don't know, but there's lots of people that are investing in different areas, and it's just good to know that you're not over leveraged in certain areas. I mean, one of the other things that you can do is look to leverage your house, or even get a partner involved, or convince. When I first got it and I did buy the income property, I did have a partner do that with me. So sometimes there's somebody else out there looking to make some partnerships are often sinking ships, but I got a good partner, so it was a good good scenario. But it's not always for everybody. But there's different opportunities. Your house is one of them. If you do have some space in terms of equity in your own home, that you can use that to leverage. They always talk about leverage when it comes to investments. So leverage one thing, but you don't want to over leverage so everything's maxed out, especially just in real estate. You have to have some other investments as well,
So do you have any kind of closing advice before I guess there's one other thing we wanted to talk about before we close out, but just in general, like, do you have any closing advice for everybody?
In terms of, I think, we've said it through the whole, the whole podcast is the fact that you really have to do a proper assessment and look at the whole situation before you make a decision. I didn't quite get it when I did an investment course through OREA, and I didn't quite get it what he meant by, not everybody wants a high cap rate, they called it at the time, right? So with commercial investment, not everybody wants a huge return on their investment. I'm like, what are you talking about? Everybody wants to make money. The one that makes the most money must make sense, right? So he said, no, like everybody has a different risk and a different situation and a different portfolio and all those sort of stuff. So in the end, just make sure that, you take everything into account before you make any decisions or give any advice.
And that sounds like pretty sound advice to me. So before we sign off, too, one thing we did want to touch on too, because it's come up a little bit more recently, was the short-term rental situation. So if you do have an income property, for whatever reason, if you do consider something along the lines of Airbnb, what kind of pitfalls are we encountering now, especially in the condo market in Toronto with Airbnb?
That's funny. I figured I knew everything about technology, all this kind of stuff, all these different websites, but things pop up all over the place. And a while ago, somebody asked me, the Airbnbs. I said, what's an Airbnb? And what? You don't know what an Airbnb is? Anyway, so Airbnbs are these short-term rentals that people are, let's say, there's different reasons why they use them. But let's say you own a house and you're going away for a month. You can go on this website and put your house up for rent for that month. And essentially, they call it Airbnb, like bed and breakfast, but it's actually, somebody's staying in your house for a month and you rent it out. But it's turned into quite the phenomenon, and it's happening across all major cities, where now investors are looking at purchasing properties specifically to rent out to Airbnb. So somebody comes in tonight, leaves tomorrow, comes in for a week, leaves next week, and it's causing some disruption within the real estate industry. And it was actually the reason why we were talking about doing this show on investment. But with regards to what's happening, I do want to make sure people understand that this is changing the way that condominiums specifically are handling, are handling their condominium corporation. So there was something in the paper recently about a decision that was made that now condominiums can put in their corporation, in their status certificate, in their rules and regulations, that short-term rentals are not allowed in the building. So people who have purchased for short-term rentals are no longer going to be allowed to do this. So an agent came to me in the office the other day and said, I rented, my person needed something to rent for 4 months. And the landlord that rented it to us, we signed a document, 4 months and everything. We're moving in on Friday. We called to book the elevator, and the condominium corporation is not allowing us access to the elevator to move in because we're a short-term rental. And of course, this is a signed legal document. The landlord has to give access to the property, and this isn't what's happening. So it's becoming a bit of a nightmare. So what's happened there is they put this Airbnb clause, we'll call it, in the rule and the status for no short-term rentals. And sure enough, now they're taking that and they're saying, well, no short-term rentals at all, like no Airbnb, no, rent it for 6 months. It has to be a year lease. And that is going to change how we do business. And we have to make sure that we're representing our buyers or tenants properly, as well as our landlords, and make sure that people realize that if they have that in there, there may be issues. So, we'll have to be typing new clauses and new things to put in offers to protect ourselves from that.
And it almost sounds like the Uber of rental properties and such, and there is that kind of pushback from the industry. It's too bad in this situation, too, that you outlined as well, because it almost seems like that clause is being used not really in the spirit. Like a 4-month rental is not really the same thing as like a weekend or a week-long rental. When you talk about short-term rentals, I guess technically it falls under the category of short-term for the purpose of this condo corporation's bylaw. But still, I mean, it is unfortunate that your fellow agent is getting kind of tagged in this unfortunate situation as well. But like you said, something to be aware of, if nothing else, that if someone is in this situation that maybe they're not even using Airbnb, but like you said, like just a four month or less than a year lease, this could be an issue in some condos now. So,
and to get yourself out of trouble, you may have to sign a 1-year lease with a side agreement to allow them to get out within 4 months, but you just never know who's going to stop you from using the elevator for all things. Like that's how they're holding you accountable, is they're saying, sorry, we will not let you use our elevator to move in unless you show us a document that says it's a 1-year lease. Craziness.
I guess that agent's going to be hiring some good movers, like walking up and down stairs. Then hopefully it's not.
It's only 6 flights. They said, oh, it's okay. I'll carry it up.
6 flights isn't too bad. Some condo buildings would be a pain getting up like 20, 30 floors.
Oh, my goodness.
So maybe we'll stop the show there then. We've had a pretty good show, I think. So if you like the show, subscribe to the show on Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you find your podcasts online. And please don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on those sites, because it really does help. You can watch this and past shows at spotlight.century21.ca/podcast. If you need to reach us, you can email us anytime at podcast@homeania.com. That's podcast at HOM as in Mary, EAN as in Nancy, IA.com. So this podcast was brought to you by the Spotlight Marketing Program, an exclusive marketing package available only to Century 21 agents in Canada. Spotlight provides agents with a comprehensive internet marketing strategy for their listings. We provide high-quality HDR photography, stunning HD video tours, a cutting-edge responsive website, and an extensive advertising system that will help sell your listings faster, sell them for more money, impress your clients, and generate leads. Find out why so many top agents are using Spotlight by visiting spotlight.century21.ca today. Eryn, thanks for hosting again. Everybody, thanks for watching. Have a great week.
Thanks a lot. Take care.